Chapter 21 of A Superfluous Woman by Emma Frances Brooke. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Bruce Peary. That evening, Jessamine stood in the small enclosure which contained Mackenzie's barns and outbuildings, her hand resting upon the railings. It was the place in which she had first become aware of Colin's existence. Her face looked worn and pale, and she grasped the rail firmly so that the knuckles of her hand looked white under the skin. This was the sole sign of the tension of her mind. All day she had done no work. The storms of the morning had ended in a steady drizzle of rain, and it was chilly enough. The landscape was gloomy, the nearer details sordid under the dripping wet, the hills covered with shreds and trails of chalky mist, and overweighted with the heavy roll of black clouds of moisture upon them. Jessamine's eyes looked steadily southward. The stern and unillumined front of a hill, down which the storm-rack crept with chilly, clinging hands, intercepted her gaze, but there was an expression in her eyes, as though this natural barrier had melted before their penetrating rays, and they saw something beyond and far off. She wore a grey Glengarry bonnet and a grey plaid about her shoulders. Her position was uncomfortable, but she had chosen it rather than endure the closeness and dullness of the little square chamber. The air, at least, was fresh and sweet. But it was silent. Everything that runs or flies, chirps or sings, and lends its little being to help make up the cheerful intermingling of sound and movement, seemed to have sought its lair and to have hurried beneath the ground. The very rain fell without its usual jovial tinkle. It was but the noiseless emptying of one of those cold and chalky clouds, and its drip washed out rather than intensified the colours of the grass and heather and foliage. Suddenly Jessamine gave a violent start. Her eyes flashed and dilated, and a glow as from some reflected sunlight burned in her face. She withdrew a step from the railing and looked to the right. A cautious step among the bushes had been, to her heart, an unmistakable signal, and now, from the mist and greyness of the birch wood, Colin's form appeared, and stood out on the green knoll near. He looked at the house for a moment, and then discovered her. She was gazing at him with a curious panting fear in her eyes. "Jessie, my do, you're waitin'." And he ran down to her. The fence was between. "No," said she, drawing still further back, and speaking almost sharply. "I thought you were away." "Ah, weel, but ye're here, and it makes no difference." "Have you bought your corn? And has Mr. Mackenzie returned?" "Oh, yes, we bought a stock for seed. John will not be back yet. He was staying at Mackenzie Craiglowry's. His cousin, ye'll understand." "He will be returning, Colin, and if so, he will see me. I should not like that." She made as though she would withdraw, and a blank look drove the radiance out of Colin's face. "Oh, Jessie, you maunna be going. Why, lassie, I was not seeing ye all day." "Is that so very necessary?" asked Jessamine, mournfulness chasing the sweetness of her smile. "I'm thinking it's likely ye need be asking that. Jessie, I'm coming over the fence." "No, Colin, no." "Ay, Jessie, ay. I'm no for bearing these bits of iron between. I've had no kiss." "Colin, stoop your head, I will give you one." "Your own self, lassie?" "Yes." He stooped his head over the fence, and Jessamine, pulling at the lapels of his coat, stretched herself up and touched his mouth with her lips. It went to his heart like a sting. In another moment he was over the fence, and had her in his arms. "Colin," said Jessamine, "let me go. You are crushing me to pieces. I thought I forbade you to come over the fence." "You'll be forbidden the sun to shine, and the wind to blaw, and the burn to run down the hill, winna ye, lassie?" Perhaps Mrs. Mackenzie has seen you from the windows. Then, lassie, I must be making my bit explanation. I have got, you'll understand, added he gravely, to be telling Mackenzie soon. Jessamine, who, after an anxious scrutiny of the road, had retired to the protecting angle of a barn, stood with her back against the wall. Her face was red enough now, and her breast rose and fell. Colin, the very picture of a handsome and triumphant lover, stood looking down upon her, his eyes wandering over the flower-like face, and his heart a mere suffusion of mingled tenderness and worship. "Colin," said Jessamine, in a rapid entreating tone, "promise me something." "If it's no against nature, lassie, I'll promise ye anything. I'll no promise not to kiss ye again in a minute." "I want you to listen in real earnest," said she anxiously. "You said you would promise." "Ay, lassie." "Promise me not to tell Mr. and Mrs. Mackenzie anything at present." There was a moment of silence. If Jessamine had looked up, which she did not do, she would have seen in Colin's eyes a little flash of pained astonishment. "Not tell! Ah, weel, Jessie, that will be as ye like, my loo. Come," he added tenderly, "a little nearer. I cannot see your eyes." As he spoke, he put his arm out and drew her close to his side. The pressure was more like that of a protecting husband than of a passionate lover. And Jessamine yielded to it tranquilly, laying her hand in his, and looking up to his face with eyes swimming in tenderness. "Not tell, my lassie," he repeated, as he bent down to look closer into them. "You do not understand," said she, her lids drooping for the moment. "That may be. But it will be my part, I'm thinking, just to be seeing that folks about gets no wrong notions into their heads." He loosed his hand from her small clinging fingers, and folding both arms about her, pressed her jealously to his breast. She lay there with her cheek pressed against his coat, and her eyes looking up at him with a sad, inscrutable gaze. "We see things differently, Colin," murmured she. "Oh, ay. Ye will be versed in many things that I was hearing nothing of. But if ye love me, it will be all one." "I do love you, Colin," said Jessamine, with sudden emotion. And she lifted her arms and tightened their grasp about his neck, and once more startled his lips with the soft fire of her own. "That's well, lassie," said he, the grave depth of his voice intensified by tenderness. "It is like the opening of heaven's gate to hear it. Many and many's the time I was thinking of love, but I was never seeing the lassie that could just make me in love with love." "But when you saw me, Colin?" "I was just set of a sudden out of earth into heaven." "Yet you thought ill of me at first, the day you came into the yard and stood staring at me, Colin, so as quite to frighten me." "Ill of you? No, na. I was just thinking that you were a make of lassie I was just not seeing before, and that a man had need to be cautious." "Cautious?" "Ay, cautious when wraiths and witches were about." "You were right," said Jessamine, with bitter energy. "Right, was I? Well, I'm no saying but there's witchery in your kiss, lassie, my ain lassie, but wrong because you love me." "Do you trust me so much, Colin?" "Oh, ay. What else would I just be doing?" "Yet you know little of me. Perhaps, it is just possible, I am different from your ideas." "Oh, may be. It will just be a very pleasant page to learn, I'm thinking." "Colin, you always seemed canny, cautious, yet you're taking up a new book, and thinking, like a child, that it will all be straight reading and pleasant." He laughed. Then he laid his hand against the curve of her cheek and chin, and lifted her face a little, and kissed her mouth and eyelids. It was so small and flower-like a face, the figure in his arms was so slight, the locks of hair ruffled against his breast were so fresh and curly and childlike. "I'm thinking I'll just risk all that's written there. Once I've folded ye to my heart, Jessie, I'm not the man to go back on a tough bet or two. I'm thinking that I'd rather like a wrestle with ye." "Colin, Colin, be warned." It was almost as though a bird should chirp out a caution, or a child exhort its elder. What in her was there which he could not master? "Warned," said he, with a low, murmuring laugh. "I'll show ye how." "Colin, Colin, you frighten me. I cannot breathe. You must not kiss me again to-night." And she struggled in his arms until he loosened them and let her slip from him. "I saw your father to-day," said she, rearranging her plaid, and beating the wet out of the Glengarry bonnet, which had long since tumbled on the ground. "Did you?" said Colin, his face lighting up with mingled surprise and anxiety. "Yes." "You called there?" answered he, with a dubious air. "Yes." "Well?" "Your father is a splendid old man." "Oh, ay. You saw my mither?" "No." He waited for more, a vague unrest troubling his heart. He scarcely liked this independent call at Dalfaber, when he had not been there to soften its asperities. His eyes were downcast. Jessamine watched his face with remorseful sympathy. "Jessie," said he, looking up at last, "ye're but a bit lassie. Ye shall have a servant when ye're my wife." Jessamine looked away with a curious creeping of blankness over the love-light and colour in her face. "Thank you, Colin," said she softly. "I'll be telling my father and my mother to-night," said he. She glanced at him quickly, alarm shooting into her eyes. "No, Colin, promise me you will do no such thing." He came nearer and looked longingly at the little bit of warm white throat he could see between the folds of her plaid, but he made no effort to kiss her. "Have you ever a mither, Jessie?" asked he, with grave tenderness. "No, I have no mother. I never knew what it is to have a mother, Colin." A vision of Aunt Arabella, of her high-ridged nose, the elegant insipidity of her visage, rose to Jessamine's mind, and sharpened her tone as she spoke. "That will be a very great loss, my dear, a very great loss. I'm thinking I will have to be mother and man to ye both." He looked at her leniently, as one looks at a child who needs directing. She looked at him with the sad, unfathomable eyes of those who are learned in life and the world. He took her hand in his own. She turned her head away. "Jessie, lass, it will be sweet to me to carry a secret in my breast, and share it just with ye alone." She made no reply, but the leaping of colour to her cheek showed that she listened. "But I'm like a partly drunken man, with wine still before him, when I see ye, Jessie." A smile like a meteor lit up her eyes. "And I'm kind of jealous of myself. I'd like to build a church about ye." Jessamine shuddered. "Oh, no, no, I should not like it." And turning her face, she suddenly lifted her eyes to his, with a soft, mysterious, tempting light in them. "Bonny, bonny bird," he murmured. He stretched his hand toward her, but she drew a little further off, and stood gazing into the murky, misty grey, where the south was. She was so still that Colin did not venture to interrupt her thoughts. She stood lifting the drenched plaid to her chin, and slightly shivering now and then. With her great beauty still before him, he had not room in his mind to discover how inscrutable she was. At last she spoke. Her eyes lifted themselves no higher than the top button of his coat, and her voice, in its low, firm tone, seemed driven out of her by a studied effort of will. "Colin," said she, "I will give you leave to tell John and Anne Mackenzie and your father and mother in 3 days' time from this, if you still wish it then." "I see no harm in that delay whatever, and I'd willingly lengthen out my joy, for it will be a joy to steal round and see ye, Jessie, to know you're all mine, and no one else to guess it." "You feel it so?" she asked, with a low, wild little laugh, and a darting look. And then she shivered again. "Good night, Colin, I'm going." "Bide a wee. I'm no saying that I can wait these 3 days and not see ye. I must see ye, Jessie." "Well, where?" said she, with a sudden fierceness of intonation. "Could ye trust me, lassie?" asked he hesitatingly. She looked in his eyes with a wild, challenging smile, triumph and dread in one. "Ay, how ye look! Lassie, every glance ye give me goes straight to my heart. I feel partly mad. But if ye can trust me, come to-morrow night to the new barn by the stack. Come, and you'll find me waiting." "I'll come, I'll come." Her eyes were meteors. "Good bless ye, my lassie. But what, Colin?" He raised his hand and laid it confusedly upon his brow. Jessamine crept near again, and leaned against him, watching him. Her looks were wild, her lips were parted by quick breaths, and her bosom panted. The man gave a great sigh, and dropped his hand. "Oh, naething. You'll just come," he said, in a faltering whisper. End of chapter 21.